These companies have been gaslighting us for years.
This is all about money.
The purpose of all commercial ventures is to create a demand.
Our children are the casualties.
We need to take back the power from these companies.
They created a dangerous situation and then manipulated these kids.
They know the levels of addiction, sexual abuse. They know the levels of suicide. They're not showing our kids what they want to see. They're showing you what they can't look away from.
Matthew O'Neill co-directed that film based on reporting by our colleague Olivia Carville, and he joins us now. Matt, great to have you here with us.
So glad to be here.
Help us understand the import of this, the magnitude of it. So this was less about the content from these sites and more about the design, the addictive nature of the design. How do you think about this judgment in the sweep of what you've been reporting on over these last many years?
Well, what you hear in that clip right there, both Laura Marquez Garrett and Matt Bergman, two of the lawyers from the Social Media Victims Law Center, they're talking about product design. And that's the key element, not only in this case in California, but in the other case that made headlines this week in New Mexico, where the product design is seen as the central flaw.
Because previously they tried to argue liability for individual posts, and that hadn't made way in the courts because of how that law was structured. This is a new approach, right?
So this is a novel legal approach that you see. It's reflected in Can't Look Away. It's actually in a trial that we follow where they're going against Snapchat that you actually see in the film. But it's the same lawyers and some of the same families that Perry Peltz, the other director of the film, and I and Olivia followed for years for Can't Look Away.
Are they using, how strong is the argument that these media companies are using the same kind of tactics that we saw with companies like tobacco and alcohol to try to market it to kids and get them hooked early and young?
Well, you're seeing headlines right now that this is social media's big tobacco moment. And it is a public health crisis. This is something that is happening to many, many, many children. When you think about tobacco, I think at its height, about 34% of teenagers were using tobacco. It's essentially all teenagers are using social media. And it's a much bigger public health crisis because of the scale of their use.
Thinking about tobacco, for instance, it had this kind of catalytic quality where after that judgment, I think there was a wider awareness of the public health impacts of it. How do you think about that, the impact, again, that this judgment in L.A., the judgment in New Mexico as well, could have on kind of advancing the conversation or a wider understanding of what's happening here?
Well, you see the headlines. I mean, this was on every homepage, on every front page. This case, Mark Zuckerberg testifying, it was a really big deal. So I think that the social impact of this, the way people are talking about these cases, the awareness that good journalism, like what you see in Can't Look Away, does for the impact and the harms that social media has on children is really changing the conversation. So you have this mixture of different forces. There's been legislative efforts. These whistleblowers, Arturo Bejar, who's been speaking out a great deal, Frances Haugen, they've been in front of Congress. But now this is a jury listening to what these whistleblowers are saying and saying that it meets the legal threshold to hold these companies liable.
And the dollar amount was not that much. It was what, $6 million. I mean, for these companies, it's a lot for me. It's a lot for all of us. But for them, it's not that much. But is it more about the precedent that it sets, that this is a successful argument that others can now pick up, and maybe that foments things like legislative change and things like that?
So this is the first case through the door. It's what's known as a bellwether case. And the other companies, TikTok and Snapchat, settled with this plaintiff in advance of going to trial, presumably because they did not want to go to trial. Obviously, Meta and YouTube thought they would be better off going to trial. That strategy did not play out for them. There are literally thousands of more people lined up behind this case. Some of the families you see in Can't Look Away are also sort of in line to hold these companies accountable. So yes, $3 million when you think about Meta's market capitalization doesn't sound like that much money, but the number of people that are coming in the doors after this case, and critically, the pressure it puts on the company to change, which is what these parents care about the most. You saw scenes, Laura Marquez Garrett, one of the lawyers who's in that clip that you shared, she was on the steps of the courthouse with other families that have cases against Meta and TikTok and Snapchat and others, all hanging on every moment of this jury's verdict. And you see photos of them embracing each other afterwards, because what they're after, what the families are largely after, is change, not just a dollar amount.
Talk a bit more about that, and I don't want to talk about these families who've been affected as a monolith, but you've spent time with a number of them. We know in broad strokes who the plaintiff was in the case in California. When you say they want change, what does that mean in real terms? Is it legislative change to Section 230, which we've heard a lot about? Is it radical changes to the way that these social media sites have their programming, the way that these apps
Their algorithms are built.
What are they looking for, if you can characterize it?
To categorize it broadly, I think they want to change the nature of the business. Right now, these businesses often put profit ahead of people and really ahead of children's lives. And that's the fundamental switch, is they want safeguards, whether the safeguards come internally from the companies, whether they come externally from legislation. The parents in these cases have taken their grief, taken this unimaginable horror that they've suffered through, and they continue to tell their story and re-traumatize themselves and bring their story out in public because they believe that change can happen. And how exactly that change happens, we don't know in this country. Imagine Congress keeping up with the change in technology. It's really hard. But our civil justice system in this case has.
Well, look, you've got this ban in Australia that
Right.
they've just instituted for people under 16. The UK tried to do something similar. They didn't quite get it, so they're doing like a pilot program where they're testing a ban. If you are a parent of a teenager, if you are a young person, frankly, if you're an adult, I get depressed after I've been spending too much time on social media. What can you do now without this legislation, without help from these companies? If you're a parent or a person looking to improve your relationship with social media, have you found anything to be effective, any tips or things to help folks out?
I'll quote one of the parents who are featured in the film, Amy Neville, whose son died of fentanyl poisoning that was delivered to him via a Snapchat connection. And Amy's biggest point for parents is talk. Talk. That's what you can do now. Talk with your kids about what they're watching. Talk with your kids about what they're using. The social media applications that are out today, that are popular today, may very well change in the next year to 18 months. And keeping abreast of that as parents is almost impossible. It's parents against these multi-billion-dollar corporations.
You can watch Can't Look Away, the case against social media right now on Bloomberg.com.